Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for your patience as we figured out some tech issues.
Mainly the elevators.
Mostly the elevators, which is in fact technology. And if you came to our previous panel this weekend, you might know that the tech gods have not exactly been on our side. So this was okay. It's all right. We're on time. We're doing great. How's everybody's MAGFest been, though? Yeah? I'm having a great time so far. I have to keep reminding myself it's only Friday, and I still have 2 whole days of fun left. Oh, my God. I don't know if I can handle it.
So welcome to Cosplayers Engineer the Impossible, designing or translating video game designs to real-life physics. We wanted to put on this panel, especially at MAGFest, because if anyone knows just how absurd and hard video game designs would be, it's this crowd. So a little bit about ourselves. I am Wings. I go by Winged Stitches on Instagram. My pronouns are he, they. I am both a craftsmanship and performance cosplayer in the Masters Division, and my specialty is namely hand sewing and embroidery, although I consider myself a jack of all trades. And my toxic trait is I can totally learn to do that craft, and taking on way too many crafts.
On the other hand, that does mean he knows how to do, like, everything. I don't know how he does it. I'm Meg. My pronouns are she, her. I go by Ascalons, plural, on Instagram, and Ascalon, singular, on Blue Sky. And every once in a while, I think about changing that so they match, and then I decide not to, so whatever. My specialty is armor and prop making. I got my start doing Fire Emblem cosplay, and then I moved on to Final Fantasy cosplay, which means I have not once in my whole life known peace. My toxic trait is putting together those massive, massive armor suits, and then it's the Thursday day of con, and I go, oh, it's fine, I got a hot glue gun, I got straps, I'll do it in the hotel room, no worries.
And how well has that worked out for you?
One MAGFest, my first MAGFest, I brought a whole sewing machine to con. And I spent my Friday of MAGFest 2017 sewing boot covers in my hotel room and crying. So, in this panel, you will learn from a lot of my mistakes.
So why are we here? As many of you have probably seen in many video games, they clearly do not talk to cosplayers before they design half of this stuff. I mean, look at this. Look at these. That doesn't mean we don't love them, though. There's a reason that we still want to cosplay them, and we do want to bring these characters to life, and some of them we even really love it. But real-life physics can get in the way of that sometimes.
Sometimes I see something that simply doesn't make sense, and that makes me want to make it more. I think it's masochism. I don't really know. I think more recently, especially in video games, a lot of companies, particularly Western companies I've noticed, have started putting out cosplay guides. Like, wow, we did actually think of these as clothes. But the older and more obscure it is, the more I want to wear it. So I don't really have that luxury.
So a little bit about what we're gonna go over today. We're kind of gonna give you an overview of some of the things that we think are very important towards breaking these cosplays down, figuring out what's going on in them, and making them. Then we're gonna do a few case studies of showing how we personally applied some of those principles to cosplays we have done. Because I learn better by examples. So, gathering references. You're obviously, when you figure out what you want to cosplay, first thing you're gonna need to know is, what does that look like? From any angle you can. Especially now, a lot more video game cosplay, or video games are coming out with G-pose in Final Fantasy XIV or other photo taking modes that you can use. These are great, especially where you can rotate the camera and get any angle.
Or zoom really, really, really close in. A trick I like to use when I can't figure out the proportions on something is to zoom as far in as I can, scale it to my own measurements, print it out, and then draw over it, and use that kind of as a guideline for a weird shape.
But it's really important to look at your lighting when you're doing so. Even if you're not using a specific photo mode, you do want to be aware of what the lighting is in the game. Up here is a costume that I worked on. There's 2 different lightings with a color match of exactly the eyedropper color from there. The third color is what I actually use. Because your eye, when you see that blue in person and it reads with the lights, looks a lot different than it does in the game, but it still reads as the same shade of blue. So being aware of what the lighting is, how harsh it is, how toned it is, especially if it's a more stylized game that has bluer lights or redder lights. So just keeping aware, especially when looking at colors, that you want to keep an eye on the lighting.
If you're not in a game that has a specific photo mode, something that can be really helpful is to find an environment in the game that is mostly white, and that way you have a perfectly neutral base that you can kind of tweak in your photo editing program of choice and make sure that you are getting a really accurate view of what the color is, and from there you can make a decision of what do I want to make it.
Another great place to look is concept art. Now, these aren't always exactly what appear in games, but a lot of times in concept art, they really break down into either layers or in a very T-pose model where you can see things a lot easier than it is in motion, and they'll give you a 360 around. They'll give you those weirder angles or some of the detail shots that you might not be able to get just from watching cutscenes or in the actual gameplay. And sometimes it's fun to take something from the concept art that doesn't appear in the game and add it into your costume. I've found that sometimes that is an element that I really enjoy and I really want to make, and I think it adds to the character. But it was harder for them to build into the game.
Sometimes character designers will also give you things like a look at a texture that's applied to a model but laid out flat, and seeing it flat as opposed to wrapped around a character's, like for example, Mael's cape situation here. If I could just see all that gold embroidery laid out flat instead of curved around her, it would help me so much to wrap my head around how do I make it.
Another great place to look is cinematic trailers. A lot of times, and you can see right here, cinematic trailer on the far side, the actual gameplay on the near side. You get a lot higher quality graphics there. That is a lot where I will go to get especially those smaller details because you can see them better. It only needs to be on there for a few seconds. You're not manipulating that character. They don't have to worry about all of your decisions in it. That you just need to show you for a few seconds what it looks like and the coolest it can. So it's gonna be the cleanest it can, and that is much easier to tell what's happening.
So when you're first figuring out how to start building a costume, it can be so overwhelming, like, oh my God, this guy is wearing so much stuff. One thing that tends to be really helpful is to try to break it down into layers. My personal workflow, and I wish I had a photo of how I do this, is I like to draw. Like, you don't have to be a great artist to do this. It's just to sort of dump your ideas and get an idea, get some color pencils, get some crayons, and just draw out kind of what do you think each individual layer looks like. And a big thing for me that I want to note here is don't be afraid to change things on this process, even for a craftsmanship cosplay. Like, yes, the model might be wearing a long sleeve shirt under a long sleeve jacket, under a long sleeve additional jacket for some reason, but you will die.
Mm-hmm. Another way that you can also break it down if you really, really don't want to draw, print out a picture and just color what you think is on each layer. It's like, okay, well, this is clearly the top layer. We'll put a blue highlight over that, and then, okay, red highlight over the next bit, and you can see what's on the same layer as the other thing. Like, you can see, oh, well, these are all I wanted on the red layer, so now let me remove in my head that blue layer and see what that red layer looks like.
Another element, again, as I mentioned, sometimes it'll be like, it's very obvious this guy's wearing a long sleeve shirt under a vest under a jacket, or he's got little suspenders on there. You can try to see, like, imagine what is underneath that I can't see. What parts of that are gonna make my life easier. For example, I had a long sleeve costume once it was a shirt with like a high neck, so I was sweaty, and then you could see the little ruffles underneath the jacket. And rather than wear a long sleeve ruffly shirt where I was gonna sweat to death, I wore a little tank top situation, had bare arms underneath my jacket, and then I just used the Playboy Bunny wrist cuffs for the ruffles underneath. It helped so much. Another note that I want to make here is you don't have to be exactly accurate. For example, I want to go back to Zhao from Genshin Impact here on the right-hand side. You can see he has a top that looks like it's really like a long kind of tunic situation. You don't have to make a long tunic. If you do, there's a good chance that that's gonna kind of scrungle up underneath the belt and look weird. You can just be like, actually, it's a top and a skirt now, so I can go to the bathroom easier. It's also, especially if it's a character who's really popular and there might be pre-made versions of them available, it is okay to look and see how did they make it happen.
Another great thing to think of when you're breaking things down into layers is what's gonna be against your skin. Because that's what, you wanna make that as washable as possible, let me tell you. And if you do have a lot of armor, it's like, okay, well, I need some help figuring out how to get something onto the arm, so maybe I have a cloth shirt underneath there that's holding that up, and that cloth shirt can be washed. Always important to have that hygiene. So there's a lot of information out there. When cosplay started, a lot of what people were doing was creating new ideas and new techniques and using materials in ways they had never been used before. And while people are still doing that now, don't get me wrong, there is still plenty of ingenuity happening in the cosplay community, there is still a lot of information out there. This headpiece is my Asari Liara headpiece from, I wanna say 2017, 2018.
When dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Oh, hush. And that tutorial is from about 2008. And I followed it to the letter, and it was amazing. You can search for, has anyone done this before? Have they tried this sort of technique? And a lot of times there is someone who has tried something. It may not be the exact same, but you can learn from what they did. Even if it's not, oh, here's an exact step-by-step by how I did it, and it's gonna be perfect if you do it. Sometimes there's just information of, I tried this and it didn't turn out good. So you know not to try that.
Can you send us a link to it for those of us who actually use your contact info?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just shoot us a message and we're happy to send you anything. A thing that I got really hung up on at first is, again, the more obscure and weird it is, the more I want to cosplay it. I'm sort of getting over it, but not really. Is a lot of times it helps to think, what is a character that people know of that might have a tutorial that I can learn from? So for example, when I first started doing Fire Emblem cosplay, I didn't know what bias tape was. And that's not great. You need a lot of bias tape for that franchise in particular. But I kind of figured out that Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender had a similar stripy situation on his jacket. So I Googled, how do people do that? And I found this stuff called bias tape. And now it's my mortal enemy, but that's nobody's fault but my own.
In addition to just searching online, there's also a lot of cosplayers out there who put out books of their own that have a lot of step-by-step tutorials with pictures, because let me tell you, pictures, oh, they help. These are a few of the ones that we recommend that we think have worked well. I mean, the Foamsmith one, you've said you've used how many times?
This is Foamsmith by Bill Duran is a really old school book. It is like from the days when EVA foam was floor mats and only floor mats. His techniques on how to build harnesses for your armor that are actually comfortable and wearable, and your armor pieces won't fly off when somebody shoulder checks you in the hallway. changed my life. I cannot recommend this book enough. Like, we have better access to materials now, but a lot of the solid core foundations really remain the same.
And a lot of times they will also have some basic patterns or some how-tos that maybe it's not exactly what you need, but you can piece that together with something else to combine it into what you need it to be.
Sometimes when you're just so stuck, seeing how somebody else did something kind of like it just makes things click, and then you can start wrapping your brain around what you need to do.
Besides cosplay, another great place to look is historical pieces. Those have been around even longer than cosplay. I know, shocking, right? But really, there is a lot of stuff out there, and even when video game designers are designing their characters, a lot of times they're looking at historical influences. A lot of fantasy comes from historical silhouettes or the way that armor was built. And yeah, they add some fantasy elements and it starts to defy gravity, but you can really find some of those bases in a lot of historical pieces. Like even here on screen, the gauntlet over there with a lovely pattern that you could easily make out of EVA foam, that's from the SCA. That's from the, I always forget, what Society of Creative Anachronism, thank you.
Thank you.
And they do a lot of historical things. That specifically is from the Armor Archive. They have a whole bunch of these. All from like 2000 to 2002 are the marks on these PDFs.
I'm a really big fan of the Met's Cloisters archive. They're on various social medias. Every single piece of armor that they have is available to look at for free online. I think as cosplayers, we get so hung up on how do I fake it that we forget to look at the original basis. So it might feel obvious, but the first time I made like Fingy armor, I was so stuck on it. I was looking at so many tutorials, I just couldn't figure it out. And then I just looked at real life Fingy armor and it made sense. That is the actual historical term, by the way. Yes?
Hi, I was an armorer first and then a cosplayer. For anyone who's interested, so video game models don't have to obey physics, right? You bend, they clip, things can go through things. It's unfortunate. If you go and learn the basics on how this stuff actually goes on a body, you're gonna end up with a costume that feels right. You can move in it, you can touch your toes, you can tie your shoes. I can't recommend it more.
That is such a great point. Thank you.
And building off of that into our next point right here is a lot of historical foundational garments are really helpful. I will be talking about this later, but corsetry in particular is a huge necessary for me in sewing and in armor making.
A lot of people tend to guess that this kind of like historical undergarments, like corsets, petticoats, et cetera, is only for ball gowns. And don't get me wrong, I love a ball gown. But I'm going to get into a case study later where I used a corset to support the dumbest armor I've ever built. And it really does make a difference.
And as Meg said, the Met is a great resource, but also just your local museums. Right now, we're up in the Boston area. The Worcester Museum has an armory exhibit out right now where you can go up real close and see these pieces up close. Even if I'm not working on something that I think is similar, I will go to some of these exhibits and just take photos that I can use as reference later to see how they did it to inform how I can do it.
Locally here around the DC area, the Smithsonian is free and they have a lot of cool stuff. It's mostly focused on American history, but we do have some weird garments and there's a lot of interesting stuff. We're just kind of looking at garments in 3 dimensions, understanding what does that fold look like? How does that fabric, can I imagine it moving? Things like that can be so, so helpful.
And also, you don't want to just look at the historic garments. For some of these, especially more modern video games, a lot of museums of more contemporary art will also have avant-garde exhibits of more modern pieces that might be a little more what you need for that project. And there's always probably going to be a cosplayer who's done it already. Right here, you've got both of us in the same costume.
It's not the same character, it's literally the same costume.
Literally, exact same one. And that means that they're probably going through or having gone through a similar issue if you're running into one. So why not join together and brainstorm, whether it's with other cosplayers, whether it's with your friends, whether it's just, hey, Meg, can you get on this call with me? I need to talk it out loud, and I kind of need you to be there like my rubber duck.
A lot of times for both of us, and we find this very, first of all, solidarity, I love it, but just talking through something. I'm not asking for advice, I just need to brain dump this with my mouth, as opposed to thinking about it. You might think like, oh, it's the same. It's not the same. There are actually psychological processes that go in your brain when you rephrase and say something out loud that can help you open up your brain to new possibilities.
It's like therapy for creatives.
It kind of is, yeah. Also, I really like complaining about what I'm making.
And I just like to hang out with other cosplayers. Like, it is so fun to see someone who is cosplaying the same thing as you. They're excited, you're excited, and you probably did some things differently. I love getting to see other people who cosplay the same thing as me, but they took it in a different way. They made a different design choice. They built it in a different way than I did. And most of the time, I learned something new because of how they did it.
For example, when I was making the costume I'm wearing right now, Yuna from Final Fantasy X, she's a very popular character. A lot of people have made her since the game came out. I talked with one of my best friends who Yuna was her very first costume. And while she used a lot of techniques that were very much, I'm 13 and I don't have access to things, it just helped me understand, oh, you know what? I understand why you, a 13-year-old, put cardboard inside your obi to stand it up. What can I do now as a not 13-year-old to replicate that? Like, not dunking on what she did. That is great ingenuity for what she had at the time. But just being able to figure out, okay, I need some stiffness to replicate the historical materials that I can't really get a hold of. What do I have on hand that I can use to recreate that? I do want to add one caveat here, and this is something that I think has had some discourse TM online. There is a way to ask another cosplayer for, especially online, there's a way to ask another cosplayer for help without asking them to kind of do it for you. There is a world of difference between, hey, do you have any tips? So like, on the whole costume, like, give me a specific part, help me out here. What are you struggling with specifically? Like, how do I make Yuna? Oh God, I don't know. What kind of painting technique did you use for Yuna's skirt? That's a better question. But additionally, don't ask them for every single little thing. I don't think there should be trade secrets in cosplay, but I have had people like, ask me, oh, how did you make this armor? And I say, oh, I used this template. And they're like, what modifications did you use to the template? Can you send me your modified templates? Can I look at your findings? And then it's like, whoa, dude, I already made this one. Can you step back?
It's really less about it's more about the like emotional labor you're having to put in by being asked for every single step of it versus, I do want to help you. I just don't have the space in my life to put in, to go find everything that I probably threw out already, all those patterns, and recreate it again. But I can say, oh, hey, I use this pattern, and just be careful to really measure your waist on that one.
Yes.
Because it's a weird waist. But I can't also send you my waist. Like, that's not gonna help you.
Like, oh yeah, I used the Yaya Han trench coat pattern, but be aware it worked for me because I have a short torso, it might not work for you. That's the kind of specific advice I'll give you if you're nice to me.
And yeah, a simple please and thank you goes a long way. So let's talk about some skills these are not all the skills that you need to do this, but you know, they're gonna help a lot. First of all being, geometry, proportional measurements, and your math teacher is telling you that you're gonna use it.
I have a really, really hard time with spatial reasoning skills. So when I was laying out the pleats on the skirt for this costume, I just couldn't conceptualize the math of how much like fabric I needed in each pleat. So what I actually did was use ye old graph paper that I saved from my college statistics class, and I created like a colored pencil diagram with like, okay, each block is an inch, so 3 blocks pleat, 2 blocks in. Okay, I get it. And that's what helped me.
Similarly, just like we've all seen those giant weapons in games, right? It's one thing for it to be exactly the size of the weapon, but what if I'm not the 8-foot tall character? Being able to scale those pieces down to fit you and your body, it's math. Sorry to break it to you. Another thing that really helps, especially if you have a hard time looking at an image and trying to figure out how you yourself are going to break it down. If you 3D model, you can make things in the 3D modeling. If it's a flat image that you have, you can make things and be able to see it in a more 3D space. If you're more like me and I don't work as well in the computer when trying to make my cosplay designs, I like to make scale models out of paper. And that's, or whatever material works, cardboard, paper, a very easy cotton, depending on what the piece is. But when I say scale model, I don't mean, to my scale. I mean like a 1/6 scale model. So we're not using a lot of material, but I can see how these shapes actually lay with each other. A lot of times that'll be really helpful for layering of garments and really seeing how they interact. That also really helps there.
A lot of these games have weird, annoying floating pieces that are not attached to anything. Yoshitaka Amano, I am looking at you. It helps a lot to have hidden attachments, and a lot of these attachments will look so obvious to you when you look at yourself. All you will see is the lobster claw or the pin setup, and somebody who's just seeing you in the hallway is not going to see that. They're going to see, oh, floating beads. Nude mesh or illusion mesh is also a really, really great resource. If you look at figure skating costumes, you'll see these used a lot where they have some impossible neckline and it's off the shoulder, but she's doing a triple axel in it. How is she doing that? And the answer is illusion mesh, or power mesh is also what it's called, where it's sort of like a stretchy athletic material that looks almost just like your skin. You can put embellishments on it, bedazzle it, and then all of a sudden you've got beautiful rhinestones all over your body, but you didn't have to glue them to your skin.
And a great thing about nude mesh is that there's been a lot of advancements. When I say nude, I mean actually nude, all skin tones. I don't have the site on me right now, or on this slide, but if you would like it, please come up to me after the panel and I will get it for you. There's a site that has the entire range of skin tones of illusion mesh. Any skin tone that you are, there will be a match for it. We have come a long way from just a plain one white pasty color that doesn't even fit on my white pasty skin.
Yes.
Speaking of mesh, do you have any info on transparent fabric that's opaque from a distance? Like if I was to cosplay as the keeper from the Evil Within, it was a big safe. Maybe like for a safe for a head, I could make it a little slide.
Oh, like this sort of like mesh where like you can see, like if you have a mask and it covers your eyes. Yes. I actually don't know what that's called. I've never done that.
What?
Window screen material. That's so
I've seen
smart.
that in a lot of like Spider-Man eyes.
Honestly, my advice would be like look at like a super popular character like Batman who tends to do this, or Deadpool I think does it. Like see what these people do and just like go crazy.
So talking about those historical garments and talking about those corsets, there's not just corsets, but also other types of framework like rigging harnesses for wings or for just very heavy materials. A lot of good framework you want to do is going to be taking the weight and strain off of your body. We are both disabled cosplayers. I cannot have a lot of weight on me at all times. So being able to put that to a space on my body that is a lot easier for me to manage is a really great thing to do, and a lot of framework pieces is what will get you there.
Different materials call for different glues, and I know, like, I want to super glue everything. I cannot recommend the website This to That more. I really can't. And when they say this to that, it is literally a series of drop-down menus where you say, I want to glue this thing to that other thing, and they will give you a tier list of the glues that you can use. And additionally, the pros and cons of each of those glues. Like, this one sets up really quick, but the fumes are toxic and you need to use protection. Or this one is non-toxic, but you really gotta clamp it. Incredible resource, but please take it at its word. Like, glues failing is so frustrating.
Mm-hmm. And take a look at those glues. A lot of them, when you're in store, will have on the packaging what they are good for connecting.
Which is so important, because sometimes it's not just this isn't gonna glue. Sometimes it's I will eat your materials. Tasty.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're good. And a really important thing, when you're researching and looking into this stuff, and you can see it just now, knowing tech terminology really helps, knowing what to search for. So on that note, here's some terms we didn't know when we started and have learned. What is a French seam?
I love a French seam. I will French seam anything if possible. It is like among the easiest ways to make a beautiful, crisp interior.
It really is. And a lot of people get told, like, well, I don't know what a French seam is. And then they learn it. I mean, I thought it was something super fancy, and then I learned how to actually do it. It's really simple. But if you don't know that term and you don't know how to look for it and look for a tutorial on it, it makes it so much harder.
Another good seam that is not on our slide, so it's a quickie, is a flat felled seam, which is the seam that makes your jean side seams look cool.
Just searching clean finish.
Mm-hmm.
Parachute clips, these are also like called quick release clips sometimes. These are what makes your backpack stay on. These are incredible for armor rigging, especially the ones where they're adjustable, so you can tighten, loosen if your body changes, or you're wearing it and you find, oh, this is actually a little too loose, it's a little too tight. You can mess with it on the fly. It's so valuable. And to go with it, nylon webbing. This is the strappy stuff on your backpacks. Again, this stuff comes in every color. So you can get it to match your undergarments and make it kind of look like, not invisible, but people will not notice it from a distance. Or you can make it like a cool contrast color. I have seen people do like sci-fi armor builds where they have sort of like shiny nylon webbing visible, and it looks so cool.
And sometimes it's really simple things, like just knowing different types of closures on jewelry, and how some of these are going to work better for certain situations than others, just knowing some of those terms, especially when you're trying to look on, okay, I need to get this tomorrow for the con, what's the term for Amazon?
I wanted to put this here specifically because I'm disabled and I have some issues with my manual dexterity, which is using my hands good. So for me, having like a toggle clasp or a lobster clasp is a lot more usable than the spring ring here. I cannot use those.
So going into a slightly different aspect of cosplay, going into more of the makeup side, if you haven't heard of rigid collodion, it helps make scars. So I personally use a lot of liquid latex. Meg's allergic to liquid latex, or to latex in general. And so we were talking about this, and I was like, have you tried this? I learned this from theater. It makes your skin sink in more, and it can still have anything you're putting on your skin, a reaction, you want to test it on yourself, but it is another resource for making scars, especially if you have a latex allergy. Another term that a lot of people have seen and don't know the name of is an overlock stitch or a surged edge. Now, this is one that is made using a serger, but you can also make something very similar using a zigzag machine on a simple sewing machine.
Most home sewing machines can also do an overlock stitch. You just need a special foot for it. It has a little bar that makes that the thread wraps around so it doesn't get eaten in your machine, which I learned when I tried to do it without that foot, and well, you know.
Did it get eaten?
It got eaten. EVA foam thicknesses. Now, back in my day, when we started, we only had the tiny 2mm craft foam, and different thicknesses make a huge difference in how the material behaves, how it curves, how it glues together. Even like you can do a side-to-side seam with 8mm foam, but you kind of like, maybe you can, I don't know, maybe you're built different, but you cannot do it with 2mm foam. This is Plastizote, which is sort of the foamy, like bubbly, squishy foam that sometimes, like, if you buy a piece of electronics and there's a foamy bit wrapped around the monitor, that's Plastizote. People like to use it for layering it over LED lights to soften the effect. So rather than see a bunch of little dots, you see like a nice soft glow. And it's really light and really cheap.
And sometimes it's just simple as knowing different types of zippers. Your separating zippers, your regular zippers, and your hidden zippers.
There are hidden, invisible separating zippers. I have never found them on a US-based site, but I get them off AliExpress, and they're really cool. PVC coupling. Now, I am not feeling that great, so I was gonna take this boy apart, and I'll try after the panel. This is 3 pieces. It fits inside of my suitcase. It separates using PVC coupling. Now, there's one kind that goes inside. There's one kind that accepts the thing that goes inside. Thank you. Oh my God, your brain.
This fits in my trunk.
Incredible.
They are really great for putting larger pieces together because, you know, we all need to get to the con somehow. So being able to break something down, PVC couplings, especially in props, comes in really handy. And a teasing brush. I had always heard about teasing when I was working on wigs, but I actually hadn't seen this style of teasing brush until last year. And it has changed my life. I was using a regular comb, but using a teasing brush makes that teasing so much easier to do. Also, we had never heard of getting sleep before a con before. I still don't think it's real, but...
No, I got straps to glue on. I got straps.
I have tattoos to paint, this is not happening.
So going over a few useful programs and resources, and this one, I'm gonna put everything on screen immediately, so if you would like to take a photo, you are welcome to. These are not all that there is. There are plenty out there. These are just some that we wanted to highlight. Free Sewing, which is the first image you can see up there, they have they're an open source software that has a bunch of patterns of different types that people have just added. And you can go in, click on the pattern, and a lot of them you can put your measurements in, and then it will create the pattern pieces for you to print out and cut out and put together. And because it is an open source software, there's a lot of people who will take one design and then alter it a bit and make it another design. So back to that, combining things that already exist out there, this is a great place for that. On YouTube tutorials have saved my life. The amount of YouTube tutorials that are in the old, like, 2006 square, they're not talking, it's probably the, like, 320 maybe if you're lucky, but the sewing grandmas know their stuff.
I work at a quilt shop.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good.
Like I mentioned before, the Met archives are absolutely incredible, great for art inspiration, great for armor, great for swords. I like looking at swords, it's cool. Technique books by Cosplayers are also a great resource. As we mentioned before, I actually got most of mine via Humble Bundle, which regularly has big packages at kind of pay what you want rates. For like $20, you can get literally 70 different books by Cosplayers. And a lot of them, like Kamui Cosplay, puts out great templates for basic armor pieces. Cowbutt Crunchies, as we mentioned before, has a book entirely just on boot covers, which is so helpful.
And then going into more the video game specific, this is not all video games, it's not even most video games, but there are a good amount of video games on Games Fashion Archive. And as you can see here, it is just a 3D model of the outfits in a semi-T pose that you can turn around, you can turn upside down, you can look inside of it almost. And the resources like that are just so helpful, especially when you're looking for just one specific thing and you can't find a cutscene that shows it at the angle you need. Things like that are really great. There's also, because I'm biased, there is one specifically for Final Fantasy XIV, Eorzea Collection. It has been my lifesaver.
This is also great even if you're not making a cosplay. I regularly pull up this in other sites when I'm just putting on one of those pre-made AliExpress Genshin Impact costumes because my God, they have so many little bits and I don't know where they go.
And another great thing, which there are many here this weekend, are convention workshops. I have learned so many skills by doing some of the more crafting-based workshops, but there's a lot of ones like this where you can just sit and listen and learn and hopefully take some things away from it. But now, maybe some things to watch out for. A recent trend that has been really unfortunate is a lot of AI patterns happening on Etsy. Oh, not like this, like this.
So this one's a lot trickier than the lady with 3 arms.
Wait, it is?
I actually fell into this trap because I just didn't know they were a thing. I had no idea this was happening. I knew about AI art, obviously, but if you look closely at this, you'll notice that while the line drawings have princess seams that go all the way from the armpit down to the waist, the fake photo on the side of it only has darts going from the chest down to the waist. They don't go all the way up. So the fact that these drawings don't match up to what you're seeing is a big, big red flag.
The biggest thing that you can really do to spot these, because they're hard to spot sometimes, is really to look at ones that have line drawings and the images they show. If those don't match up, that's a pretty big red flag. Another thing to just watch out for is your magnet strength. First time I ever tried to use magnets, because I had seen them so cool in a piece of armor that someone showed me, I did not use strong enough magnets. Those would not stay on whatever I tried.
Another element that it's sometimes a piece will work just fine on its own, but connected with another element of your cosplay, it will not. A good example is, for me, wigs and Velcro. I have multiple shoulder pauldrons that are connected with Velcro to my breastplate, and then I wear a long wig, and the wig inevitably gets stuck in the Velcro, and then everything goes to hell.
And also just wearing ease. Like being able to move around in something is something you really want to make sure, no matter how simple or how complicated it is, you got to make sure that you can actually move in it, and that similar to just different elements interacting, when you put everything on, can you still move?
This is also true of the sewing term ease, which is the extra space in a garment past your body measurements. The thickness of your foam will change the measurements of your armor. So always be aware, make mock-ups, make multiple versions, just make sure everything fits properly and can move with you.
Also, one thing we really want to stress, make sure you're using the proper safety equipment for whatever you are working on. Different things require different types of equipment. Make sure you're being safe out there. And also being safe about keeping your stretch and your non-stretch fabrics separate and knowing what they each do, because they are going to act very differently. And please be aware of con crunching. Don't bring your sewing machine into the hotel room.
It is never worth it. It is never, ever, ever worth it, I promise.
So we know we're running a little we got about
20 minutes?
Yeah, about 20 minutes left. So if we go through any of these a little fast and you would like to ask us specific questions, we will be outside the room after the panel. So let's go into a case study. This is my Warrior of Light from Final Fantasy XIV. I recently competed in this at Anime Boston and won the First Place Masters Award for it. No, sorry, Second Place Masters Award. Still good.
Thank you, still woo.
So, like I said, Final Fantasy XIV has a great thing called G-Pose, where I can go in there, I can manipulate the lighting, I can zoom in, I can zoom out, and I could get photos from any angle to get exactly what I needed. This is just a small amount of the way too many photos that are still saved on my laptop, but it was really helpful for both building it and then for putting in my build book later. We had talked about layering. Here is a visualization of how I did the layering on this. And this is something that I really like to show craftsmanship judges, is how my layers come together and how to be creative with them. So this specific costume, I know I wanted my arms to be mobile. I play a bard main. I need to be able to shoot a bow in photos. Now, I'm not actually shooting a bow at anyone. And one thing I looked at was superhero not cosplays, but the actual Marvel costumes. If you see that bottom image, the way the Marvel costumes are made is a stretch bodice with the sleeves and then a vest on top. So you have a lot more arm movement. So that's how I did it. And you can see that color breakdown of the layers and how I highlighted it. I didn't even sketch that out. I mean, I did because I need it to visualize, but even just that kind of shows you how you can break it down. Wire really helps to be added into things to make them more posable. Specifically on this project, I had a wire in the collar to help that gravity-defying shape, and wire in the ears to make them really curl in on itself and stay there. There are a lot of different gauges of wire you can use that make them either sturdier or really, really pliable, and being able to just put something simple and pliable in really helps the shape. Meg actually has a great example of this of her unibow.
Oh, hang on, I'm stuck on something.
Oh no.
Uh-oh. Oh, I'm sitting on my string. That's not me. So for my bow for the back of my Una-Obi, I found that if it was too stiff, then it would get crunched up in my luggage. So rather than create an actual Obi bow or even a fake one, this is all built with wire, so I can actually extend it all the way like that, and then repose it, reposition it as I want, depending on like how it's positioned that day, how I'm feeling that day. Oh, I want to scrunch it more. Oh, I want it to be bigger. Or additionally, oh, I want to sit down in this, so I'm just going to like fold it backwards a little bit. This makes things so that they can bend and move around and not necessarily be stuck in a permanent position, especially if it's a position that can break and no longer go back the way it was supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I did on this costume was with the gravity-defying element of, I just put my weapon on my back and it stays there. Magnets, they had to be very, very strong, but magnets are a great way to have those invisible holds. And then I believe this is one last thing on this one. One thing that I really struggle with is my body constantly changing sizes. And I don't want my cosplays to be a one wear and done. So one thing that I really built into this costume was a lot of corsetry and different snaps. So the image of the back of the inside of the back of the jacket there is, it has a corset back, so if I gain or lose weight, I can adjust it. And then the back tails were just held onto it with snaps, which were much easier to take off and move than to completely undo the seams and have to refit it to my body. And like Meg had talked about earlier with breaking things down into skirts and tops, even when it's like a full coat, that's what I did. I didn't want to have that weight on my shoulders. My shoulders are not good. So I put it on my waist under a corset.
This also helps a lot with the changing body that you mentioned, because that means like if your waist measurement fluctuates a little bit but your shoulders didn't, then you only have to really adjust one little piece as opposed to the whole jacket.
And then the last image is just a visualization of the bow, because I'm a shorty and I needed to make sure that bow was to my size and not just to the character model in the game.
I'm going to talk about how Yoshitaka Amano did me dirty. This is a case study of my Cecil Harvey costume from Final Fantasy IV. Now, this character, we mentioned earlier picking and choosing refs, but this character has existed for so long in so many different mediums and really different versions. So I took a look at literally all of them. I looked at this initial concept art from Yoshitaka Amano, which is my favorite art of the character and sort of the one I had in mind when I created this costume. I took a look at this one from the Nintendo DS remake, which is the only version I could find where you could see his back. And I loved the back design on this and the sort of swoopy cape situation he had, as well as the applique here. And I really wanted to carry that element into my costume, even though I didn't use the DS version anywhere else. This is a cutscene from that same remake, which is also in the PSP version, which is my favorite version. And I used this reference for a lot of my wig work because this is the most kind of realistic take on him that was available. And this is his Dissidia artwork by Tetsuya Nomura. We also have beef. We don't have to get into it. And this one is one of the newest, so it was available really, really high res. And Nomura's art style is so much more graphic and defined than Yoshitaka Amano's really painterly abstract style. So I was able to use this to sort of pinpoint more of the concrete shapes that were there, whereas in Amano's art, everything's kind of sketchy and wishy-washy. But also, I used this reference image, which is a promotional poster from the DS version. Ask me about this game anytime. I used this version for the color palette. I love this image so much. I love this sort of dreamy, painterly look to it. And so I carried this element into my cosplay. Do not be afraid to mix and match references in this way, whether it's for craftsmanship or just for yourself. It is going to make a costume truly yours and also just sometimes a lot easier. This is what my armor looked like, but the thing is, you may notice that there's nothing attached to this armor. Uh-oh.
When'd you do that, Meg?
Okay, so on this one I was good. On this one I was good because I learned a lesson. I learned a valuable lesson, which is I gave myself 2 weeks just for straps. That might sound like a lot to you, and I promise you, I still felt like it wasn't enough time. Take the time to figure out how things attach to you. Take the time to try it on, to walk around your house, to go for a weird little walk outside and have your neighbors stare at you. Please do it. I promise it's worth it. Please. I'm begging you to learn from my mistakes. Please, God. But you can also modify what's already out there. Now, as you may have noticed, that is an absolutely wild design. And being old school Final Fantasy, very few people are making that character. So I adapted Kamui Cosplay's aforementioned patterns for, I used the horn patterns that she has, kind of like tiefling horns, to attach them, the spikes that attach up to his shoulders. I also adapted her existing, or not hers, but other existing breastplate, pauldron, and greave patterns. I created the mock-ups out of poster board, actually, and then drew on top of them, added on top of it, drew on top of it, taped on top of it, until I had a shape that approximated it. And just having that basic cupped shape to start opened up my brain so I could go from there. Mock-ups help so much with weird shapes. Here's a work in progress. This is the horn when I first built it out of EVA foam. And then I dremeled down the edges so it would be smoother. And then these are the pauldrons that I built. You can still see a lot of that basic cupped shape and that curved lip that I then drew into, cut into, modified until it was the right shape. And this is the breastplate, God help me. Again, this is not like any breastplate you're gonna find a template for, but I was able to add on to, modify, cut into, and create this after multiple mock-ups of poster board. I love jewelry making, so I really wanted to incorporate that into this costume. That's another tip I have. If there's something you like doing, do as much of it as you can. Beading wire, crimp beads, and lobster claws, as well as clear claw clips, help me achieve a lot of the weird floating jewelry that he has. It also allows for adjustment, so if I found something was dragging, drooping, or was tight and constricting my movement, I could unclip it, move it around, and do it differently next time. I don't have a lot of close-up photos of my Cecil progress on this, but I did have some photos of my Terra progress where I first started using this technique. You can see on her hip here, this like weird floating bead situation. I actually have Cecil's beads right here with me, or some of them. My God, he has so many. And you can come up and see this after. But what it is beading wire, which is flexible and very strong. double wired, and then I use something called crimp beads on each of these segments here that make the beads look like they're floating, but they're not. They are indeed obeying physics because I have to.
And even if you're like, oh, well, I can see that cord right here, you can't really see it as much once it's against that fabric, once it's not just being held behind a neutral background. So our last quick case study is going to be Dorian from Dragon Age Inquisition. This is one that I worked on in 2019 to 2020. Sometimes you don't have a photo mode, and sometimes that character likes to hang out in a library where this is your lighting. Luckily, there were times where I could go, take him out in the field and get pictures, but he only wears this underlayer in this library. So sometimes you have to deal with bad lighting. And you can do things like changing your monitor settings a bit, but sometimes you just need to see the small piece of it that you can see. Like, I was able to see the colors that I wanted to use out in the world, even though his robes were covering most of it. And I used this for more of the shapes, because I can still see the shapes here. I also used a good amount of historical research on this, particularly one that I hadn't used before of the padding on collars, to add that pad stitching to give that collar more volume, to give that more magical mage robe feel. This is also a sketch that I made of the belt because I was having such a hard time figuring out how that was connecting to things. I needed to just make a 360 sketch for myself, and that really helped me visualize how I wanted to build it. This costume used a lot of weird attachments. We talked earlier about that, that bar and circle one. Which one?
Toggle.
Toggle, thank you. You know those terms so much better than I do. I used toggles to hold that armor into the pants because I needed them to be two pieces because I need to pee. And also, it used a lot of, I had a hidden zipper in the armpit because that was the only place where it could be hidden. And there's a lot of corset closures because I find them the easiest for my body. So finding different types and being creative with your closures and the ways that things attach really helps a lot. And here's a hint, armor can be draped. If you're using a bunch of pieces that need to go together in other ways, this is technically leather armor, but even with EVA armor, putting it on a form of some sort, that form is not my size, it has never been my size. But having a shape where I could see in a 3D space how things connected really helped all of those silly, silly straps come together. So a few just quick tricks that we want to add from other cosplays that were not our case studies. If you have floating armor, I'm going to stand up and be a little louder. If you have floating armor, try connecting it through a hole in your costume. These connect up to a belt that I'm wearing. So I can walk around without thigh armor falling down because my thighs are too big for that to stay on. And then just another visualization on those changing proportions. When I did Liara, she has an insanely long torso. I don't. So I actually cut out a whole segment. She has 5 different panels going down the center of her stomach. I made it 4 because that just looked, well, the size of 4. I think I faked in another one. But that you can see that they're not the same proportions, but that was a proportion that looked good on me and I felt good about.
This also helps a lot with crossplay in my experience. When I did Cecil and when I've done various other male characters, I've used shoulder pads from blazer sewing to build out my shoulders wider, which gives me that 90s Yowie Man Dorito proportion, which I, as a 5'4" cis woman, do not possess.
I mean, these are shoulder pads.
You are so Dorito mode right now.
So, quick little recap. You can research and reference. These are going to be your best things to make a solid foundation. The better you can make that foundation of the costume, the better it's going to be. Repeat history, but innovate when you need to. There's a lot of information out there, but it needs your touch to put it together in just the way that's going to be for you. Don't be afraid to ask for help, but do be specific on what you're asking for, not just help me. That's not helpful to anyone. And find what works for you. Like I've said several times in this, I have found corset closures work the best for me. That's not true for a lot of people, or for some people. Like if you have trouble lacing it, or if that's just not working for you, find what does work for you.
Even in high-end cosplay craftsmanship competitions, you can make decisions. As long as it's not an accident, make a decision and say, like, for example, I left this part out because it hurt to wear. I left this part out because I have accessibility needs and it made my life harder. I left this part out because it's ugly and stupid. These are all great decisions to make.
Or even, I made this more because it helped me. I made this bigger and more stable because I need that stability.
I added these rhinestones because I wanted glitter.
And remember, you too can defy physics like the cats.
Thank you all so much for coming. We ran a little bit long, so I don't think we really have a ton of time for Q&A but we will be packing our stuff up here or out in the hall. You can come look up close and touch if you would like some of the things that we have. I also want to say, not to like single you guys out, but I see some FE4 cosplays in the audience and I think you guys are cool. Thank you.